Hello students, I hope you are all out of your comfort zone and making use of these classes. Each lesson or chapter in history is divided into 2 or 3 units. Please watch all the units. Sometimes each unit has an assignment, or you will have the assignment towards the end, or we'll have the recapitulation questions to whatever you have listened. Let's take a quick recap of what we did in the last chapter. The first phase of Indian national movement, 1885 to 1905. We studied about the 3 phases of the national movement, methods followed by the early nationalists or the moderates, and the contribution of Dadabhai Navroji, Surendranath Banerjee and Gopalakrishna Gokhale. And today we shall start off Lesson 4, Unit 1, the second phase of the national movement. Let me give a brief introduction to Lord Curzon, who was a racist and responsible for the partition of Bengal. Towards the end of 19th and the beginning of 20th century, the Indian national movement assumed a definite shape and character. Bengal became a nerve center of Indian politics. During this time, Lord Curzon came to India as a new viceroy. Curzon, of course, was a racist like all the other imperialists. A confrontation between Curzon and the educated middle-class nationalists was bound to take place. And this eventually happened in Bengal, where the Indian intelligent people was most assertive. In 1899, Curzon reduced the number of elected members in the Calcutta Corporation Act. Curzon then launched an attack on Calcutta University by passing the University Act as a pretext to raise the standard of education all around. The Act reduced the number of elected Senate members and thus transferred the power of affiliation, colleges and school to the government officials. The final attack came in July 20th, 1905, when Curzon announced the partition of Bengal. The government of India announced its decision to form a new province of Eastern Bengal and Assam, comprising of Chittagong, Dhaka, and Assam. To meet the growing nationalist challenge in Eastern India, Curzon wanted a division of Bengali-speaking people. This was considered as a concealed attack on Indian nationalism. Well, that was a brief introduction, but the main point, what you have to remember here, which is on the board, Lord Curzon was chosen as a Viceroy of India in the year 1899 to 1905. He was a racist and was responsible for partition of Bengal, which took place in the year 1905. It was announced on July 20th, 1905, the province of Bengal to be divided, and it was implemented on 16th October 1905. The nationalist leaders declared it as a day of mourning. Now let us see the scheme of partition. The presidency of Bengal was the most thickly populated province in British India. It comprised of Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, Chota Nagpur, and some other remote areas. It had a huge population, over 80 millions. Now, how do you remember these names? Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, and Chota Nagpur. B squared OC. The province of Eastern Bengal was dominated by Bengali Muslims, and province of Bengal was dominated by non-Bengali population. and hence this scheme of partition was implemented fine, as I told you earlier, on 16th October 1905, and it was referred as Mourning Day in Bengal. We shall now know the reason given by the British for the partition of Bengal, the concealed motives behind the partition, and how the Nationalists interpreted this partition. The main motive for the partition of Bengal, according to the British rulers, was administrative necessity. They said that the province of Bengal was too huge to be efficiently administered by a single provincial government. However, the officials who worked out the plan had a concealed motive. Let us know more about it. Bengal was a nerve center of Indian nationalism at that time in the year 1905. So, the British hoped to stop the rising tide of nationalism by dividing Bengal. Second, the partition of the state was intended to curb Bengalis' influence by not only placing Bengalis under two administrations, but by reducing them to a minority in Bengal itself. Third, the partition was meant to foster division on the basis of religion. Now let us see how did the Nationalists interpret it. For a 1 mark, you can write 2 reasons. Deliberate, it was a deliberate attempt and to weaken nationalism in Bengal. But if it is a 2 mark or a 3 mark question, the answer should be the following way. The Indian nationalists clearly saw the design behind the partition and condemned it. They saw that it was a deliberate attempt to divide Bengalis on religious and territorial grounds and thereby weaken nationalism in Bengal. They felt that administrative efficiency could have been better secured by separating Hindi-speaking Bihar and Odia-speaking Odisha from the Bengali-speaking part of the province. And moreover, the manner in which the announcement of partition was made without any regard for public opinion hurt the sentimental feeling of the Bengalis. The expected questions can be, how did the Nationalists interpret the partition of Bengal? So you can write the keyword is, it was a deliberate attempt and to weaken nationalism in Bengal. What was the reason given by the British? What was the reason? They said that the province of Bengal was too huge to be efficiently administered by a single provincial government. So that is the reason what they gave. When was the partition of Bengal implemented? It was implemented on October 16th, 1905. And what was it called as? It was called as the Mourning Day in Bengal. Now we shall learn the reason for the Congress to be split into two in the year 1907 in Surat session. Well, for 1 mark or 2 mark, you can write this answer. They split because of ideological differences between the early and the later nationalists. And the second reason is over an issue of presidentship. The moderates suggested Ras Bihari Ghosh and the assertive suggested Lala Lajpat Rai. There was total confusion in Surat in the year 1907. Now, if it is a 2 or a 3 mark question, then the answer should be this way. The Swadeshi movement cast its shadow on the growing differences between the early nationalists and the assertives or the later nationalists. The early nationalists or the moderates had unlimited faith in the British benevolence and justice. So what did they have? They had the unlimited faith in British benevolence and justice. Assertive views were just the opposite. The assertives wanted to adopt Swaraj, Swadeshi, boycott, national education, whereas the moderates wanted constitutional path with 3 Ps, but the assertive wanted everything in action. So, with this ideological differences, the Congress split into 2. The differences between the 2 sessions continued to surface once again over the issue of presidentship. The moderates proposed Ras Bihari Ghosh to be the president of Congress, while the assertives proposed Lala Lajpat Rai as a president in December 1907 in Surat. There was utter confusion. This led to the split in Congress. It was so unfortunate because it gave rise to the British to take an opportunity and exploit the situation to their advantage. So the British adopted a policy of repression and concession. Concession for the moderates and the Muslim, and repression to the assertive nationalists. You can expect a question like this: how did the nationalists interpret the partition of Bengal? What was the reason given by the British for the partition of Bengal? And when was the partition of Bengal implemented? Now let us see what were the objectives of the assertive nationalists. The objective was very simple, plain and direct. The first one, they wanted to achieve a complete independence of Purna Swaraj. The second, they wanted to establish a government by the Indians because they believed that Swaraj was the only solution to all the problems of the Indians. So whatever it is, they wanted a Purna Swaraj. We shall now see the methods used by assertives or the later nationalists. The first one, to popularize Swadeshi goods. The idea of using Swadeshi goods, which created bonfires. Now, what do you mean by Swadeshi? Using one's own goods. So naturally, when you start using one's own good, there's a lot of development in a country. Like you create employment. There's a lot of development to cottage and small scale industries. And you refuse to use foreign goods, and thereby creating bonfires at the crossroads. Why at the crossroads? Because all the people have to see, and this was the most important method which was followed by the assertives. The next one is boycott of foreign goods. Not only foreign goods, but also government services, that is British government services. Honors which were given to the Indians, they rejected, and the titles. The next one was to promote national education. Now, national education to provide vocational, political and secular and moral education. A large number of national schools were established in East Bengal, and Bengal National College was set up at Kolkata and Pachayappa's National College at Chennai. In Punjab, the DAV movement made considerable effort in order to bring about a national education which made them as a full-fledged Indian people. The next one was passive resistance. Adoption of non-violent and revolutionary methods or activities. This was done in order to refuse to participate with the government, court, college, schools, which ultimately advocated self-confidence and the spirit of sacrifice among the people. The next method was to infuse courage through speeches and writings. Bala Gangadhar Tilak started 2 weeklies, which is Maratha and Kesari. In one of the papers, he boldly writes, "If a thief enters your house," thief means it's a Britisher, "if thief enters your house and if you have no strength, lock him inside and set your house ablaze. Don't be worried that you have lost your house, but be happy that you have put an end to an enemy." It is said that Balagangadhara's speeches had a lot of vibrance. When he began to speak, it touched every Indian listening to his speech, and they would rise together against the British. So it is said that when he started speaking, the British officer in one of the corners would listen to him, and finally after his speech, Balagangadhara Tilak would go to the British officer and say, "Come on man, I did my job, now you do your job. Arrest me and put me into the prison." So this particular British officer would have no words to say or reply back to Balagangadhara Tilak. He would just walk away. The next method was to celebrate Shivaji and Ganapati festival. Like Shivaji, why Shivaji? To increase the patriotism and include the masses. And Ganapati also was the same, in order to increase the number of people, to include masses in their activities. The next list, which is not there in your book, is they started the secret societies. The secret societies were like Anushilan Samiti and Mitra Mela were set up. Well, fine. Now we have learnt about the methods of the assertive. I believe that you would have understood. Well, students, we finished with the Unit 1 of Lesson 4, the second phase of Indian National Movement. The probable questions can be: how did the Nationalists interpret the partition of Bengal? Why is October 16, 1905 regarded as an important day in the history of Indian national movement? What were the methods adopted by the assertive nationalists in the freedom struggle? And what were the objectives of the later nationalists?